Moving on to Brexit, and you know, we're very grateful to have you here, and I know it's difficult to say too much when we don't know what the deal will be. Business needs more certainty. We've said that right from the beginning, particularly in respect to mandatory business protocols, in respect to trading, tax and finance, contracts and other legal matters such as GDPR, export documentation. They need to know where they are. The list goes on really, but so that's it really. So I just wondered, businesses need to know the cards they have to play.
Absolutely.
What is it, just days away now,
Yeah.
So...
It's about 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yes, exactly 14 days,
It's extraordinary that businesses don't know what they're going to be dealing with in 2 weeks' time. And I think whatever your views, whether you voted Remain or whether you voted Leave, that lack of certainty and time for businesses to plan and be ready for whatever comes next, whether it's no deal or a deal, I think is astonishing and outrageous, to be honest.
It is.
And, you know, my views and my party's views on Brexit are very well known.
Yes.
But we accept that we left the European Union on the 31st of January. That has happened, that is fact. We are no longer part of the European Union. We had this transition period to agree a trade deal and work out what comes next. The whole point of a transition was to allow businesses time to prepare for what comes next.
Yes.
We were promised that we would have a deal by July, which is why the Prime Minister refused to extend or request an extension to transition. Now, when the election was fought a year ago, on the basis that, you know, Brexit would be done and there was an oven-ready deal and so on, that was fought when we didn't know that we were about to enter a global health pandemic.
Yes.
As soon as the scale of the coronavirus crisis became known, I and my party have been calling consistently for an extension to the transition period. That's not because we were anti-Brexit and therefore we want this transition to go on indefinitely. It was purely in practical terms because we could see the challenges for businesses and the problems with negotiating in the midst of a pandemic when businesses are just focused on survival in a pandemic.
Day to day.
The last thing they needed is to think about the consequences of Brexit and how they need to adapt their business. So I personally have, in the House of Commons and in various other debates, several times this year, challenged ministers to say, you know, please extend the transition period. Businesses need time to adapt and adjust. But unfortunately, there was this ideological commitment to we will absolutely not extend the transition period. And now we're at that point where legally, I think it's too late. I mean, I'd like to think that if come New Year's Eve, we still don't have a deal, that there may be some pragmatism to say, well, actually, can we somehow extend the arrangements we've got at the moment? But you know, who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks? I think either way, you know, I fear even if there is a deal, it will be a very poor deal. And given that we know that services, which is such a huge part of our economy and so critical for us here in London, will be not part of the deal, I think it will be a bad deal. So, you know, we're really between a rock and a hard place, a bad deal or a no deal. And it's beggars belief that it's all hinging on fishing, which is such a minuscule, tiny fraction of a percentage of our economy.
Yes, completely agree. But thank you for that, and I think businesses will be pleased to hear your opinion on that. But whatever their opinion politically, they're crying out for certainty, clarity really. So moving on to grants and support for businesses that have had to shut completely. So, well, you know, arts, cinemas, sports venues, weddings, theatres and so on. Hampton Playhouse in our constituency. I just wondered what your view was on that. In terms of the support, is there any additional support you feel that could be, and your party thinks could be given to these businesses? Because they are suffering, no doubt.
Yeah, and I heard quite a lot from the Landmark Arts Centre as well early on in the pandemic. And so I was pleased when government finally came forward with a package for the arts and cultural sector. It was a long time coming, and it took a lot of took a lot of lobbying and pressure,
Yes,
not
you
just
did.
from politicians, but from celebrities and
Yes.
artists in the sector. So that was very welcome. And
Yes.
we've heard even in the last few weeks, grants being given to some of our arts and cultural institutions and heritage institutions, Strawberry
Yes.
Hill House, Hampton Court Palace, but also
Yes.
the Landmark Arts Centre and others. And also, critically, some businesses that are very important to production and live events that are local to the constituency that I've heard in the last few weeks have had some of those government grants. So that is very welcome. Depending on how long this goes on for in terms of when we can fully open up again, that may need to increase. And it also brings me back to the point we were making at the start, that actually a lot of those who've been excluded, individuals who've been excluded from financial support, are in these sectors.
Absolutely.
And actually that package of support was largely for institutions. It wasn't for a lot of those freelancers and others who work in these sectors who've been left out. One thing I would pick up as well that is also really important locally is sports.
Yes.
And I had also been lobbying on behalf of, for instance, Harlequins and Hampton and Richmond Borough Football Club to provide support, because clearly they've taken a huge financial hit as a result of not being able to allow people through their turnstiles.
Yes.
And so, again, it was very belated in coming. We finally heard something 2-3 weeks ago, but that's all loans based, no grants.
Yes.
And whilst in Premiership football there's huge amounts of money, you don't see that in Premiership rugby, and certainly not in lower league clubs such as Hampton and Richmond Borough Football Club. So I'm disappointed that was just a loan based scheme, and for them, actually, the thing that's going to help them get back on their feet, as well as having some financial support, is being able to safely get fans back in stadia. And while we were in Tier 2, for a brief couple of weeks, they were able to start doing that. And actually, Harlequins have had the biggest pilot so far in terms of sporting events for having fans safely return. And actually, it was very, very well managed.
Yes. Yes, and sad to see so many people losing their jobs in so many sectors, but I was speaking to the RFU yesterday. 150 jobs have gone from the RFU, affecting many local people, but it's
and the Quins as well.
And the Quins as well, absolutely.
And you mustn't forget that on match days for both Quins and the RFU, there are a huge number of casual staff that are drawn again from the local area.
Yes.
So they may not necessarily have permanent jobs with them and been laid off, but all of those match day roles and contracts, whether it's catering, cleaning, stewarding, and so on, all of that has been lost for however many months.
Yes.